The security camera in the Riverside Academy art studio captured everything: the deliberate slash of a blade through 3 months of work, the laughter, the careful placement of spray paint cans to frame an innocent girl. But what those cameras also caught, what nobody expected, was the moment Maya Chen decided she wasn't going to be anyone's victim. She was going to be their reckoning. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Riverside Academy's pristine hallways, casting long shadows across polished marble floors. Students in crisp uniforms moved like pieces on a chessboard, each knowing their exact place in the hierarchy. Maya Chen walked among them, but she had never quite figured out where she belonged. Riverside Academy wasn't just any private school. It was the kind of institution where senators sent their children, where CEOs groomed their heirs, and where a single semester's tuition could buy a house in most American towns. Maya's presence here was thanks to a full scholarship earned through her extraordinary artistic talent. But that same talent that had opened doors also painted a target on her back. She clutched her worn messenger bag closer as she navigated the crowd, her fingers unconsciously tracing the edges of her sketchbook inside. Maya had learned to move quietly through these halls, not because she was naturally shy, but because 3 months at Riverside had taught her that visibility often meant vulnerability. The art wing of Riverside Academy was Maya's sanctuary. Unlike the rest of the school with its intimidating grandeur, the studios felt alive with creativity and possibility. Natural light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating easels, pottery wheels, and canvases in various stages of completion. The smell of oil paints and clay hung in the air like incense. Maya pushed open the heavy door to Studio B, her advanced placement art classroom. Inside, 20 easels stood in neat rows, each holding a work in progress. But Maya's eyes went immediately to the corner where her masterpiece waited. For 3 months, she had poured her soul into a mixed media installation that combined painting, sculpture, and digital elements. It was her entry for the National Young Artist Competition, a contest that could earn her recognition and, more importantly, a full scholarship to any art school in the country. The piece, titled Invisible Voices, was a powerful commentary on how society often overlooks the stories of marginalized communities. Maya had painted portraits of forgotten heroes on canvas, then layered them with translucent materials that made the figures appear and disappear, depending on the viewer's angle. Embedded LED lights created an ethereal glow, while carefully placed mirrors reflected the viewer's own image into the composition, making them part of the narrative. Mrs. Patricia Holloway, the art teacher, had called it breathtaking and professionally sophisticated. Coming from a woman who had curated exhibitions at the Whitney Museum before coming to Riverside, that praise meant everything to Maya. As Maya approached her installation, she noticed something that made her stomach clench. Positioned at the easel directly across from her work was Brittany Westbrook, the undisputed queen of Riverside Academy's social hierarchy. Brittany was everything Maya wasn't: blonde, wealthy, connected, and utterly convinced of her own superiority. Her father was a prominent real estate mogul, her mother, a former Miss Georgia, who now hosted charity galas for tax write-offs. Brittany's art project sat on her easel like a monument to mediocrity. It was a safe, uninspired landscape painting that looked like something from a hotel lobby. Technically competent but emotionally vacant, it was the artistic equivalent of background music. Yet Brittany had been telling everyone who would listen that she was destined to win the National Young Artists Competition. "Morning, scholarship girl," Brittany said without looking up from her palette. Her voice was honey-sweet, with an undercurrent of venom that Maya had grown to recognize. Maya didn't respond. She had learned that engaging with Brittany only fed the flames of whatever game she was playing. Instead, Maya set down her bag and began unpacking her supplies. Today she planned to add the final touches to Invisible Voices, adjusting the LED programming to create more subtle transitions between the lighting effects. "Interesting piece," came a voice from behind her. Maya turned to see Jackson Palmer, Brittany's boyfriend, and the crown prince of Riverside's social elite. Jackson was tall, athletically built, with the kind of effortless confidence that came from never having to question whether you belonged somewhere. His family owned a chain of luxury hotels across the Southeast, and Jackson had been groomed from birth to take over the empire. "Thank you," Maya replied cautiously. Jackson had never spoken to her directly before, and his sudden interest felt like standing too close to a coiled snake. "It's very political," Jackson continued, circling her installation with the air of an art critic. "The whole social justice theme. Very on brand for someone like you." The phrase, "someone like you," hung in the air like smoke. Maya's jaw tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. She had learned to pick her battles carefully at Riverside Academy. "Art should reflect truth," Maya said simply. Jackson smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Truth is subjective, don't you think? I mean, what's true for you might not be true for others. Take opportunity, for example. Some people see barriers where others see open doors." Maya understood the subtext perfectly. Jackson was questioning whether she deserved to be at Riverside, whether her scholarship was truly earned, or simply a diversity token. It was a familiar song, played on repeat by students who couldn't imagine that someone from Maya's background might actually be more talented than they were. "Maya's piece is extraordinary," Mrs. Holloway interjected, appearing beside them with a coffee mug in hand. "It demonstrates a level of artistic maturity that most students don't achieve until graduate school." Jackson's smile faltered slightly. "Of course, I wasn't suggesting otherwise." But Maya caught the look that passed between Jackson and Brittany across the room. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but it carried the weight of conspiracy. Maya filed that moment away in her memory, a skill she had developed out of necessity. As the class period began, Maya lost herself in her work. The technical aspects of her installation required intense focus. She was adjusting the timing sequence on her LED controller when she became aware of whispered conversations around her. Students kept glancing in her direction, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. During lunch break, Maya usually retreated to the library or found a quiet corner in the courtyard. But today, she needed to finish calibrating her lighting system before the afternoon critique session. Mrs. Holloway had arranged for the entire advanced placement class to present their competition pieces, and Maya wanted everything perfect. She was alone in the studio, hunched over her laptop and adjusting code, when she heard footsteps in the hallway. The sound was muffled, deliberate, like someone trying not to be heard. Maya paused her work and listened carefully. The footsteps stopped just outside the studio door. Maya held her breath, waiting. After a few moments of silence, she convinced herself she had imagined it and returned to her programming. The LED sequence was almost perfect now, the lights creating a gentle pulse that made her painted figures seem to breathe with life. It wasn't until the afternoon critique session that Maya realized something was wrong. Students had gathered around the room, positioning themselves near their works for the presentation. Maya approached her installation and immediately noticed that something was off with the lighting. The LEDs were flickering erratically, creating a harsh strobe effect instead of the gentle transitions she had programmed. "Technical difficulties?" Brittany asked with mock sympathy. "That's always the risk with these complicated digital pieces. Sometimes simpler is better." Maya knelt beside her installation, checking the connections. Everything appeared to be properly connected, but the controller was malfunctioning. She opened her laptop to check the programming and felt her blood turn to ice. Her carefully written code had been replaced with gibberish, random characters that made no sense. "Is there a problem, Maya?" Mrs. Holloway asked, approaching with a concerned expression. "Someone sabotaged my programming," Maya said quietly. The room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward her, some shocked, others skeptical, a few openly amused. "That's a serious accusation," Mrs. Holloway said carefully. "Are you certain it wasn't just a technical glitch?" Maya stared at her laptop screen. She knew her own code like a signature, and this destruction was deliberate. But proving it would be nearly impossible. The saboteur had been clever, making it look like a random corruption rather than targeted vandalism. "Maybe you should have backed up your work," Jackson suggested with false helpfulness. "That's Computer Science 101. "I did back it up," Maya replied, pulling up her cloud storage. But as she navigated to her backup files, her heart sank further. The backup had been corrupted too, replaced with the same meaningless text. Brittany stepped forward, her expression a perfect mask of concern. "Oh no, that's terrible. And so close to the competition deadline. Is there any way you can recreate it?" Maya's hands trembled slightly as she closed her laptop. Recreating the programming would take weeks, and the competition deadline was in 5 days. Without the digital component, Invisible Voices was just a painting with some mirrors and broken lights. "Perhaps," Mrs. Holloway suggested gently, "you could present the piece in its current state and explain your original vision. The judges will understand that technical issues sometimes occur." But Maya knew that wouldn't be enough. The digital integration wasn't just a feature of her piece, it was the heart of it. Without the carefully choreographed lighting, the portraits remained static, the metaphor of invisible voices lost. As the critique session continued, Maya sat in silence while her classmates presented their works. Each piece was discussed and analyzed, but Maya's installation sat dark and broken in the corner, a monument to someone else's cruelty. When the class ended, students filed out chattering about their projects and competition strategies. Maya remained behind, staring at her sabotaged masterpiece. 3 months of work, hundreds of hours of careful planning and execution, destroyed in a matter of minutes. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "I'm sorry this happened," Mrs. Holloway said, placing a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. "But don't let this discourage you. You're incredibly talented, and there will be other competitions." Maya nodded, not trusting her voice to remain steady. Mrs. Holloway meant well, but she didn't understand what this competition meant to Maya. It wasn't just about recognition or even scholarships. It was about proving that she belonged in spaces like Riverside Academy, that her voice and perspective had value. As Maya packed her laptop, she noticed something glinting on the floor near her installation. She bent down and picked up a small piece of silver metal, no bigger than a thumbtack. It looked like it had fallen from some kind of electronic device. Maya turned it over in her palm, studying its edges. One side was scratched, as if it had been forced from its housing. She slipped the metal fragment into her pocket and finished packing her supplies. As she headed toward the door, Maya caught sight of something else that made her pause. In the corner of the studio, barely visible unless you knew to look for it, was a small black device mounted near the ceiling. It was positioned to have a clear view of her installation area. Maya had never noticed the camera before, which meant it was either new or very well hidden. She studied its angle and realized it would have captured everything that happened during lunch break when she was alone in the studio. For the first time since discovering the sabotage, Maya felt something other than despair. She felt hope. And more than that, she felt the first stirrings of a plan that would ensure whoever had destroyed her work would face consequences they never saw coming. As Maya walked through Riverside Academy's marble hallways toward her dorm, her mind was already working, processing details and forming strategies. She had learned something important today about the environment she was navigating. The gloves were off, and the rules of engagement had fundamentally changed. Maya Chen might be quiet, but she wasn't powerless. And she was about to prove that underestimating her was the biggest mistake her enemies could make. Maya's dormitory room at Riverside Academy was a study in contrasts. While her roommate's side showcased designer luggage, expensive skincare products, and framed photos from European vacations, Maya's half was organized with military precision. Her art supplies were arranged in labeled containers, her textbooks stacked by subject, and her modest clothing hung in color-coordinated order. On her desk sat a small digital camera her grandmother had given her before she left for Riverside, along with a journal where she documented everything. That evening, Maya sat cross-legged on her narrow bed, the mysterious metal fragment rolling between her fingers. Her roommate, Chelsea Morrison, was at dinner with friends, leaving Maya alone to process the day's events. The fragment was definitely electronic in origin, possibly from a USB device or small recording equipment. Someone had been careless, and that carelessness might be their downfall. Maya opened her laptop and began researching the building's security system. Riverside Academy prided itself on state-of-the-art technology, and the school's website boasted about their comprehensive surveillance network designed to ensure student safety. What interested Maya most was learning that all security footage was stored on local servers for 30 days before being archived to cloud storage. She pulled out her journal and began writing, not in English, but in Mandarin characters her grandmother had taught her. If anyone found her notes, they would see what appeared to be language homework rather than a detailed plan for investigation and retaliation. The next morning brought Maya's first real test of resolve. She arrived at the art studio early, hoping to assess the damage to her installation in better light. As she rounded the corner, she nearly collided with Mr. Derek Stevens, the school's head of security. Stevens was a former police detective who treated his job at Riverside with the seriousness of federal law enforcement. "Miss Chen," Stevens said, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. "I understand there was an incident with your art project yesterday." Maya's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression calm. "Yes, sir. Some kind of technical malfunction with my programming." Stevens studied her face carefully. "Mrs. Holloway mentioned you believed it might have been sabotage. That's a serious allegation in an environment like Riverside Academy." "I was upset," Maya replied carefully. "I probably spoke too quickly. Technology can be unpredictable." Stevens nodded slowly, but Maya could see he wasn't entirely convinced. "Well, if you do remember anything specific that might suggest otherwise, you know where to find me. Riverside Academy has zero tolerance for vandalism or harassment." As Stevens walked away, Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Someone had prompted him to have this conversation. Someone wanted to know exactly how much Maya suspected and what she might do about it. During the first period of advanced literature, Maya found herself analyzing her classmates with new intensity. Brittany sat 2 rows ahead, her perfectly styled hair catching the morning light as she took notes in a leather-bound planner. Jackson occupied his usual seat by the window, occasionally glancing at his phone with the casual arrogance of someone who knew teachers wouldn't dare call him out. But it was the students Maya had never paid attention to before who now captured her interest. There was Kevin Martinez, a quiet junior who worked part-time in the school's IT department. His family owned a successful chain of automotive repair shops, making him wealthy enough for Riverside but not wealthy enough to run with Brittany's crowd. Kevin had the technical skills to corrupt computer files and access to security systems. Then there was Rachel Kim, a senior who served as the student representative on the school's disciplinary board. Rachel's father was a federal judge, and she carried herself with the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected other people's lives. She also had access to information about disciplinary proceedings and student records. Maya began constructing mental profiles of potential allies and enemies, categorizing students based on their access, skills, and motivations. It was a process her mother had taught her during their weekly chess games, where victory belonged to whoever could think the most moves ahead. At lunch, Maya made her first strategic move. Instead of hiding in the library as usual, she walked directly to the main dining hall and selected a table with clear sightlines to the popular section where Brittany's group held court. She sat alone, methodically eating her salad while observing the social dynamics playing out around her. Brittany's table functioned like a miniature kingdom, with carefully maintained hierarchies and unspoken rules. Jackson sat at Brittany's right hand, naturally claiming the position of power. To her left sat Madison Foster, whose family owned a media empire spanning 3 states. Madison's loyalty to Brittany was absolute, probably because their fathers were business partners. But Maya noticed cracks in the foundation. Ashley Wong, daughter of a tech billionaire, sat slightly apart from the core group. Her body language suggested discomfort with something, her responses to Brittany's comments delayed and forced. There was also Tyler Brooks, son of a prominent politician who kept checking his phone with an expression of growing anxiety. Maya pulled out her sketchbook and began drawing, using her artistic work as cover for surveillance. To anyone watching, she appeared to be working on character studies for a project. In reality, she was documenting seating arrangements, conversation patterns, and relationship dynamics. "Excuse me," a voice said beside her. Maya looked up to see a girl she didn't recognize, probably a sophomore, based on her young features and nervous demeanor. "You're Maya Chen, right? The artist?" Maya nodded cautiously. "I'm Sophia Martinez," the girl continued, glancing around nervously. Kevin's younger sister. "I heard what happened to your project, and I wanted you to know that not everyone here thinks it's okay." Sophia slid into the seat across from Maya, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Kevin saw some things on the security monitors that he thinks you should know about. But he's scared to get involved because his scholarship depends on his IT job." Maya's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. "What kind of things?" "He can't tell you directly, but he said if you happen to be near the computer lab around 3:30 this afternoon, you might find some information left on one of the public terminals. Station 7, specifically." Before Maya could respond, Sophia had gathered her things and disappeared into the crowd. Maya looked across the dining hall toward Brittany's table and found Jackson staring directly at her, his expression unreadable. He said something to Brittany, who turned to look at Maya with undisguised hostility. Maya calmly returned to her sketchbook, but her mind was racing. Kevin Martinez had access to security footage, and apparently, he had seen something worth risking his position to share. The question was whether this was genuine help or an elaborate trap. At 3:30 sharp, Maya entered the computer lab. Station 7 was tucked in a corner, partially hidden by a support column. Maya logged in using her student credentials and immediately noticed a folder on the desktop labeled Art History Research. Inside were several files, including video clips with innocuous names like Renaissance Techniques and Modern Installation Methods. Maya plugged in earbuds and opened the first file. Her breath caught as she recognized the art studio from a high angle. The timestamp showed yesterday's lunch period. In the video, Maya watched herself leave the studio and then, minutes later, saw 3 figures enter. The resolution wasn't perfect, but she could clearly identify Brittany, Jackson, and a third person whose face was partially obscured by a baseball cap. The video showed Brittany standing guard by the door while Jackson approached Maya's installation. The third figure went directly to Maya's laptop, inserting what appeared to be a USB device. Maya watched in fascination as her saboteur worked quickly and efficiently, clearly knowing exactly what they were doing. But it was what happened next that made Maya's blood run cold. After corrupting her files, the figure in the baseball cap deliberately dropped something small and metallic near the installation. Maya realized she was watching the moment the evidence fragment was planted, meant to be discovered later and lead investigators in the wrong direction. The video quality made it impossible to identify the third person definitively, but Maya could see enough to know it wasn't Kevin Martinez. The build was wrong, and the movement suggested someone older and more experienced with technology. Maya copied the files to her own encrypted drive, then deleted them from the public terminal. As she prepared to leave, she noticed Kevin Martinez enter the lab. He didn't acknowledge her directly, but he sat at a nearby terminal and began typing. After a few moments, he spoke quietly without looking at her. "There are more files," he said. "Different locations, different times. Someone's been watching you for weeks, documenting your routines and schedule. This wasn't random vandalism. It was planned." Maya felt a chill creep up her spine. "Who else knows about this?" "Just me and Sophia. And now you. But Maya, you need to be careful. Whoever did this has serious resources and connections. They made one mistake with the security footage, but they won't make another." Kevin stood up and gathered his things. "The files will be in your dorm room mailbox tonight. Anonymous delivery. After that, I can't help you anymore. Too much at stake." As Kevin left, Maya remained at the terminal, processing what she had learned. Someone had been stalking her for weeks, learning her patterns and planning the perfect moment to strike. The corruption of her art project wasn't teenage cruelty. It was strategic warfare designed to eliminate her from the competition and possibly from Riverside Academy entirely. That evening, Maya found a manila envelope in her mailbox with no return address. Inside were printed screenshots and additional video files showing surveillance of her daily routines. Someone had been tracking her movements, noting when she arrived at the studio, how long she stayed, and when she was most vulnerable. The evidence painted a picture of calculated harassment that went far beyond typical bullying. This was systematic intimidation designed to drive her away from Riverside Academy. But the perpetrators had underestimated their target. Instead of breaking Maya's spirit, they had revealed their own methodology and given her the tools she needed to fight back. Maya spread the evidence across her desk and began creating a timeline. Every incident, Every encounter, every suspicious moment from her 3 months at Riverside was documented and cross-referenced. Patterns emerged that she had missed before, connections between seemingly random events that now revealed themselves as part of a coordinated campaign. As Maya worked late into the night, she felt something shift inside her. The quiet, careful scholarship student who had walked these halls in fear was evolving into something more dangerous. She was becoming a hunter, and her prey had no idea they were being watched. The game had rules, and Maya was finally learning how to play. But she wasn't planning to win by their rules. She was going to change the entire board. The Riverside Academy Library occupied an entire floor of the historic main building, its vaulted ceilings and mahogany shelves creating an atmosphere of scholarly reverence. Maya had discovered that the rare books section on the third floor was virtually deserted during morning study periods, making it the perfect location for clandestine meetings. She arrived 15 minutes early, positioning herself at a table with clear sightlines to all entrances. The events of the past week had taught her to always maintain situational awareness. At exactly 10 o'clock, Ashley Wong appeared at the top of the spiral staircase, her designer sneakers silent on the thick carpeting. Ashley was not someone Maya had expected to approach her. As the daughter of tech mogul David Wong, Ashley had grown up in Silicon Valley before her family moved to Georgia for her father's political ambitions. She was brilliant, wealthy, and typically part of Brittany's inner circle. But something had changed. "I know you're investigating what happened to your project," Ashley said without preamble, sliding into the chair across from Maya. "And I know who you really need to be looking at." Maya studied Ashley's face, searching for signs of deception. "Why would you want to help me?" Ashley's jaw tightened. "Because I'm next." She pulled out her phone and showed Maya a series of text messages from unknown numbers. The messages were subtle but unmistakably threatening. Some people don't know when they don't belong. "Loyalty tests are coming soon. Choose your friends carefully." "It started 3 days ago," Ashley explained. "Right after I didn't laugh hard enough at one of Brittany's jokes about your little art accident. Apparently, showing you basic human decency makes me a traitor to my social class." Maya leaned forward. "Tell me about the third person in the security footage. The one with the baseball cap." Ashley's expression darkened. "That's what I came to talk to you about. It wasn't a student." Before Maya could respond, another voice interrupted them. "I hope you're discussing something educational." Both girls looked up to see Marcus Thompson, a senior Maya recognized from advanced physics. Marcus was a scholarship student like Maya, but from Chicago's South Side. His combination of academic excellence and basketball talent had earned him admission to Riverside, though he navigated the social landscape with careful diplomacy. "Marcus," Ashley said with visible relief, "I was hoping you'd come." Marcus took a seat, his expression serious. "Ashley told me what's been happening, and I have some information you both need to hear." He pulled out a tablet and opened a document that appeared to be official correspondence. "My mother works for the Illinois Department of Education, and she has contacts throughout the private school network. She started asking questions after I told her about Maya's situation." Maya's pulse quickened. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that revealed this isn't the first time something like this has happened at Riverside Academy," Marcus replied grimly. "There's a pattern of promising minority students facing mysterious accidents that damage their academic or artistic work right before major competitions or evaluations." Ashley leaned back in her chair. "How many students?" 7 in the past 3 years, Marcus said. "A violinist whose sheet music was stolen before a conservatory audition. A writer whose laptop was corrupted before a national essay contest. A mathematician whose research was plagiarized by another student. All scholarship recipients. All cases that were quietly resolved with the victims transferring to other schools." Maya felt a chill settle over her. "And the school never investigated?" "Oh, they investigated," Marcus said bitterly. "But somehow the evidence always pointed to technical failures, student carelessness, or academic integrity violations by the victims themselves. Very convenient for maintaining Riverside Academy's reputation." Ashley suddenly sat up straighter. "The third person in your footage. I think I know who it was." She lowered her voice to barely above a whisper. Dr. Richard Pemberton. He's the school's technology coordinator. But he's also Brittany's godfather. His family and the Westbrooks have been connected for generations. Maya's mind raced. A staff member involved in the sabotage explained so much. Access to security systems, knowledge of how to corrupt files without leaving obvious traces, and the ability to manipulate investigations. Dr. Pemberton would know exactly how to frame technical failures and make them look authentic. There's more, Ashley continued. My father's company did some consulting work for Riverside Academy last year, updating their digital infrastructure. I remember Dr. Pemberton bragging at a dinner party about how the new security system could be selectively activated or deactivated. He called it, quote, administrative flexibility. Marcus pulled up another document on his tablet. I've been researching Dr. Pemberton's background. He's been at Riverside for 12 years. But before that, he worked for a private security firm that specialized in corporate espionage. Interesting skill set for a school technology coordinator. Maya began connecting pieces in her mind. So Brittany identifies students she considers threats, Dr. Pemberton uses his access to plan and execute sabotage, and the administration either doesn't investigate thoroughly or actively participates in covering it up. It's more sophisticated than that, Ashley said. I think there's a whole network involved. Parents, alumni, board members. Riverside Academy's reputation depends on maintaining a certain demographic balance. Too many scholarship students succeeding at high levels would undermine the narrative that legacy admissions and wealthy families are inherently superior. Marcus nodded grimly. And if scholarship students start winning major competitions or earning prestigious college admissions, it raises questions about whether Riverside's regular tuition-paying students are actually as exceptional as advertised. Maya felt anger building in her chest, but it was cold and focused rather than explosive. How do we prove it? Ashley exchanged a look with Marcus. That's where things get complicated. Dr. Pemberton is smart enough not to leave obvious evidence. And even if we exposed him, he could claim he was acting alone to help his goddaughter. The larger conspiracy would remain hidden. Unless, Marcus said slowly, we could catch them in the act of planning their next operation. Ashley pulled out her phone and showed them a group chat screenshot. Brittany's been more active than usual in our social media threads. She's been asking a lot of questions about other scholarship students, their projects, their schedules. Particularly about someone named Isaiah Washington. Maya knew Isaiah by reputation. He was a junior scholarship student from Atlanta, a gifted musician who was preparing for auditions at Juilliard and other top conservatories. His violin performances at school concerts had been extraordinary, earning praise from visiting music professors. Isaiah has a showcase performance next Friday, Marcus said. It's being attended by scouts from several conservatories. If our theory is correct, that would be the perfect target for sabotage. Ashley leaned forward. Here's what I'm thinking. If we can predict their next move and document it happening, we'll have evidence of the conspiracy in action. But we'll need to be very careful about how we gather that evidence. Maya pulled out her notebook and began sketching a rough timeline. What do we know about Dr. Pemberton's access and schedule? He has master keys to every building, Ashley replied, and administrative access to all digital systems. But he's also paranoid about security. He does regular sweeps for unauthorized recording devices and has been known to confiscate student phones during investigations. Marcus added he usually works late on Thursday nights, updating systems and running maintenance. If they're planning to sabotage Isaiah's instruments or sheet music, Thursday night would be the logical time. Maya felt the familiar sensation of puzzle pieces clicking into place. Then we need to be there first. Over the next hour, they developed a preliminary plan. Ashley would use her access to Brittany's social circle to gather intelligence about timing and methods. Marcus would leverage his connections with other scholarship students to warn Isaiah and coordinate protective measures. Maya would handle technical surveillance, using equipment and methods that Dr. Pemberton wouldn't expect from a student. But as they prepared to leave the library, Ashley grabbed Maya's arm. There's something else you need to know. Brittany's father has been having private meetings with the school board. Word is they're discussing, quote, academic standards and, quote, maintaining institutional excellence. I think they're planning to tighten scholarship requirements or find other ways to reduce the number of minority students. Maya felt the stakes crystallize in her mind. This wasn't just about her art project or even Isaiah's music. It was about the systematic exclusion of students like them from institutions that shaped the next generation of leaders. The sabotage was just one tool in a larger campaign to maintain educational apartheid disguised as merit-based admissions. "How long do we have?" Maya asked. "The board meets again in 2 weeks," Ashley replied. "If they're going to make policy changes, that's when it will happen." As they descended the library stairs, Maya noticed several other students watching them with curious expressions. Word was spreading that something was happening, though most people didn't understand what or why. Near the main entrance, they encountered Tyler Brooks, the politician's son Maya had observed earlier. Tyler looked nervous, constantly checking his phone and glancing around as if he expected to be followed. "Ashley," Tyler said urgently, "can I talk to you privately?" Ashley hesitated, then nodded. "I'll catch up with you later," she told Maya and Marcus. As Maya and Marcus walked toward their next classes, Marcus spoke quietly. "Tyler's father is being investigated by a federal ethics committee. Something about campaign finance violations. If Tyler has information that could help us, he might be willing to trade it for protection." Maya filed that information away. The network of corruption at Riverside Academy was revealing itself to be far more complex than simple bullying. Financial crimes, political pressure, academic fraud. The threads were interconnected in ways that suggested this conspiracy had been years in the making. That afternoon, Maya received an unexpected summons to Mrs. Holloway's office. The art teacher's expression was troubled as Maya entered. "I've been reviewing your portfolio for alternative competition opportunities," Mrs. Holloway began, "and I discovered something concerning. Your transcripts show some inconsistencies in your previous academic record." Maya's blood ran cold. "What kind of inconsistencies?" Mrs. Holloway showed her a printed document. "Your test scores from your previous school don't match what's in Riverside's admissions file. Someone has been questioning whether your scholarship was obtained through fraudulent means." Maya stared at the papers, recognizing the sophisticated nature of the attack. They weren't just targeting her current work. They were attempting to invalidate her right to be at Riverside Academy at all. "Mrs. Holloway," Maya said carefully, "I've never seen these documents before. My original transcripts are completely different." The art teacher studied Maya's face intently. "I believe you. Which is why I think you should know that Dr. Pemberton personally delivered these documents to my office. He suggested I might want to reconsider my recommendation letter for your scholarship renewal." Maya felt the walls closing in around her. The conspiracy was accelerating, moving beyond sabotage into direct character assassination. But they had made one crucial mistake. By involving Mrs. Holloway, they had revealed their desperation and their methods. "What are you going to do?" Maya asked. Mrs. Holloway smiled grimly. "I'm going to request copies of your original transcripts directly from your previous school, and I'm going to start asking some very pointed questions about how fraudulent documents ended up in an official academic review." As Maya left Mrs. Holloway's office, she realized that the battle lines were finally clear. On one side stood the institutional power of Riverside Academy, backed by wealthy families and corrupt administrators. On the other side stood a growing coalition of students and faculty who refused to accept injustice disguised as tradition. The war for the soul of Riverside Academy was about to begin. The emergency school board meeting was called with less than 24 hours' notice, a move that caught everyone off guard. Maya learned about it from a terse email that arrived at 6 a.m. requesting her immediate presence in the boardroom at 3 p.m. that afternoon. No explanation, no agenda, just a summons that felt more like a legal proceeding than an academic conference. Maya sat in the anteroom outside the boardroom, her hands folded carefully in her lap. Through the heavy oak doors, she could hear muffled voices engaged in what sounded like heated discussion. Occasionally, a name would rise above the general murmur, hers, Dr. Pemberton's, and strangely, her grandmother's. The door opened, and Mrs. Eleanor Whitfield, the board chairwoman, emerged. Mrs. Whitfield came from old Georgia money, the kind of family that had donated the original land for Riverside Academy and maintained influence through generations of carefully placed endowments. Her smile was polite but cold as winter marble. "Miss Chen, please come in." The boardroom was an intimidating space designed to make visitors feel small. Dark wood paneling reached from floor to ceiling, interrupted only by portraits of distinguished alumni and major donors. A massive conference table dominated the center, around which sat 7 board members, Dr. Pemberton, Principal Harrison, and, to Maya's shock, her own grandmother. Mei Chen sat ramrod straight in her chair, wearing her best dress and the jade pendant Maya's grandfather had given her 50 years ago. Her grandmother's presence here was like seeing a protective spirit manifest in hostile territory. "Please, sit down, Miss Chen," Mrs. Whitfield said, gesturing to an empty chair that felt uncomfortably like a defendant's dock. Dr. Pemberton cleared his throat and opened a thick folder. "We've called this meeting to address serious concerns about academic integrity and the validity of certain scholarship awards." Maya's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. This was the attack she had been expecting, but its speed and formality caught her off guard. During a routine review of student records, Dr. Pemberton continued, "We discovered significant discrepancies in Miss Chen's academic transcripts. Test scores that don't align with her previous school's records, recommendation letters that may have been altered, and grade point averages that appear to have been inflated." He began distributing copies of documents around the table. Maya recognized them as the forged transcripts Mrs. Holloway had shown her, but now they were presented in official binders with authentication stamps and notarized signatures. "Furthermore," Dr. Pemberton said, his voice gaining confidence, "we have reason to believe that Miss Chen may have engaged in cybercrime to support her deception. Several security breaches in our computer systems coincide with her enrollment, including unauthorized access to student records and faculty files." Maya felt the room spinning slightly. They weren't just questioning her scholarship. They were accusing her of criminal activity. The sophistication of the frame-up was breathtaking in its audacity. Board member Robert Sterling, a real estate mogul and Brittany's uncle, leaned forward. "Miss Chen, these are extremely serious allegations. Before we proceed with formal charges, we wanted to give you an opportunity to explain these discrepancies." Maya looked at her grandmother, who gave her an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. Then she spoke, her voice steady despite the tremor she felt inside. "I've never seen these documents before today. My original transcripts are completely different, and I have copies at home to prove it." Dr. Pemberton smiled thinly. "Of course you would say that, but we've already contacted your previous school, and they confirm these are the transcripts they sent to Riverside Academy." Maya felt her world tilting. If Dr. Pemberton had corrupted the records at her previous school as well, then her word alone wouldn't be enough to prove her innocence. Mrs. Whitfield opened another folder. "There's also the matter of your recent behavior, Miss Chen. Making unsubstantiated accusations against fellow students, creating a hostile environment in the art program, and now these integrity questions. The board is prepared to recommend immediate suspension pending a full investigation." Maya's grandmother finally spoke, her accent thick with emotion but her words crystal clear. "My granddaughter did not lie to get into this school. She earned her place through hard work and talent." Robert Sterling's expression softened slightly when addressing Maya's grandmother. "Mrs. Chen, we understand this is difficult, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Perhaps it would be best for Maya to transfer to a school more suited to her actual academic level." "With respect, Mr. Sterling," came a new voice from the doorway, "that evidence is fabricated." Everyone turned to see Mrs. Holloway enter the room, followed by a man Maya didn't recognize. He was middle-aged, wearing a crisp suit, and carried himself with the authority of someone accustomed to courtrooms. "I'm David Rodriguez, attorney for the Chen family," the man announced. "And I have some very interesting information for this board." Mrs. Whitfield looked flustered. "This is a closed academic review. Attorneys are not typically." "This stopped being an academic review the moment you accused my client of criminal activity," Rodriguez interrupted smoothly. "Now, it's a legal matter." He opened his briefcase and began distributing documents. "These are the authentic transcripts from Maya Chen's previous school, obtained directly from their registrar this morning. As you can see, they differ significantly from the documents Dr. Pemberton provided." Maya watched Dr. Pemberton's face drain of color as the board members compared the documents side by side. Rodriguez continued, "We also have testimony from the registrar at Lincoln High School confirming that someone claiming to be from Riverside Academy's administration contacted them yesterday. requesting that they update their records to correct clerical errors. When they refused, they received threatening calls about losing accreditation. The room fell silent except for the sound of papers rustling as board members absorbed this information. But Dr. Pemberton wasn't finished. "Even if there are questions about the transcripts," he said, his voice taking on a desperate edge, "there's still the matter of the cybersecurity breaches. Our system logs clearly show unauthorized access from Miss Chen's student account." Mrs. Holloway stepped forward. "That's interesting, Dr. Pemberton, because I asked our external IT consultant to review those logs. Would you like to tell the board what he found?" Dr. Pemberton's jaw tightened. "I'm not sure what you're implying." He found that the access attempts were made using administrative privileges, not student credentials, Mrs. Holloway said firmly. "Someone with master access to our systems framed Miss Chen by using her account information to create false logs." Rodriguez pulled out another document. "In fact, we have evidence that Dr. Pemberton has been using his administrative access for years to manipulate student records, alter security footage, and plant evidence against scholarship students." Maya felt a surge of hope, but it was quickly crushed by Dr. Pemberton's next move. "You're all being manipulated," Dr. Pemberton said, standing up abruptly. "Miss Chen is obviously more sophisticated than we realized. She's recruited faculty members and outside attorneys to support an elaborate deception." He pulled out his phone and began reading from it. "I have documentation of Miss Chen meeting secretly with Ashley Wong and Marcus Thompson, planning to disrupt school operations and fabricate evidence against faculty members. This is a coordinated attack on Riverside Academy's integrity." Maya's heart sank as she realized how thoroughly they had been surveilled. Dr. Pemberton had been watching their every move, turning their investigation against them. Robert Sterling looked troubled. "Dr. Pemberton, if you have evidence of student conspiracy—" "I have recordings," Dr. Pemberton interrupted, pressing play on his phone. Ashley's voice filled the room. "If we can predict their next move and document it happening, we'll have evidence of the conspiracy in action. Then Marcus. Thursday night would be the logical time." Finally, Maya's own voice. "Then we need to be there first." The board members looked at each other with expressions ranging from confusion to alarm. Mrs. Whitfield's face had hardened back into disapproval. "Miss Chen," she said coldly, "it appears you've been planning to break into school facilities and fabricate evidence. This is far more serious than academic dishonesty." Maya felt the walls closing in around her. Everything they had discovered, every piece of evidence they had gathered, was being twisted into proof of her guilt rather than her innocence. Dr. Pemberton pressed his advantage. "I recommend immediate expulsion and criminal charges for conspiracy to commit burglary and fraud," Rodriguez tried to object. "These recordings are taken completely out of context." "The context seems quite clear," Robert Sterling said grimly. "Miss Chen has admitted to planning illegal activities on school grounds." Maya looked around the room, seeing doubt creeping into even Mrs. Holloway's expression. The lawyer looked stunned by the sudden reversal. Her grandmother's face had crumpled with heartbreak and confusion. Mrs. Whitfield called for a brief recess, during which the board members huddled in whispered conversation. Maya sat in her chair, feeling the weight of defeat settling on her shoulders. Dr. Pemberton had outmaneuvered them completely, turning their own investigation into evidence of criminal conspiracy. When the board reconvened, Mrs. Whitfield's expression was formal and final. "Miss Chen, this board finds sufficient evidence to recommend your immediate suspension from Riverside Academy. You will have 72 hours to collect your belongings and vacate your dormitory. Criminal charges will be filed with local authorities regarding your planned break-in and conspiracy to defraud the institution." Maya felt numb as the words washed over her. Everything she had worked for, everything she had endured, was crumbling around her. But as she looked up, she noticed something strange. Ashley Wong was standing in the hallway outside the boardroom, visible through the glass doors. Ashley held up her phone and pointed to it, then made a gesture Maya didn't immediately understand. Mrs. Whitfield continued, "Furthermore, we will be conducting a comprehensive review of our scholarship program to prevent future incidents of this nature." Maya realized what Ashley was trying to tell her. The recording Dr. Pemberton had played. Ashley was holding up her phone to indicate it was still recording. Whatever happened next was being captured. As the board members began gathering their papers, Maya made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. "Before you finalize this decision," she said, standing up slowly, "I think you should know that everything happening in this room is being live-streamed to social media platforms." The room froze. Dr. Pemberton's face went white. Maya continued, her voice gaining strength. "Ashley Wong has been broadcasting this entire meeting to her father's media network. Thousands of people have just watched Riverside Academy's board destroy a student's life based on fabricated evidence." Mrs. Whitfield sputtered, "That's impossible. This is a private—" Dr. Pemberton forgot to disable the conference room's video system when he was so busy planting evidence, Maya said. "And Ashley has friends in very high places who are very interested in watching how elite schools handle accusations of racism and fraud." Maya could see panic spreading through the room as board members realized the implications. Their private character assassination had just become a public relations nightmare. But even as Maya delivered this revelation, she knew it wasn't enough. The damage to her reputation was done, and Dr. Pemberton still held too many cards. This battle was lost, even if she had managed to wound her enemies in the process. As security officers arrived to escort Maya from the building, she caught one last glimpse of her grandmother's face. Instead of disappointment, she saw something else: pride. Her grandmother understood that sometimes fighting back was more important than winning. Maya walked out of Riverside Academy with her head held high, knowing that while this war was far from over, she had just taught her enemies a valuable lesson about underestimating their opponents. 3 days after her suspension, Maya sat in her grandmother's modest kitchen, surrounded by boxes of evidence and legal documents. The house felt different now, not just a temporary refuge between school terms, but potentially her permanent reality. Outside, news vans still cruised the neighborhood occasionally, though the initial media frenzy had died down to a simmer. Maya's phone buzzed constantly with messages of support from unexpected sources. Students from schools across Georgia had seen Ashley's live stream, and the footage had gone viral under hashtags like #RiversideConspiracy and #JusticeForMaya. But viral support didn't change the fact that she was academically homeless with just months before college application deadlines. ACA. The kitchen table had become Maya's war room. Her grandmother had cleared away the usual clutter of bills and grocery lists, replacing them with printed emails, court documents, and a whiteboard covered in Maya's careful diagrams showing connections between Riverside Academy board members, their business relationships, and patterns of student targeting. "You need to eat something," her grandmother said in Mandarin, placing a bowl of congee beside Maya's laptop. Maya looked up from her screen, realizing she hadn't moved in over 2 hours. "In a minute, Nai. I'm close to something important." What Maya had discovered was a digital trail that went far beyond Dr. Pemberton's clumsy evidence planting. Using her forced exile as an opportunity for deeper investigation, she had been cross-referencing public records, social media posts, and corporate filings. The picture emerging was more systematic and more profitable than she had imagined. Her phone rang, interrupting her concentration. The caller ID showed Ashley Wong. "Maya, you need to get somewhere with internet access immediately," Ashley said without preamble. "Something major is happening at school." Maya grabbed her laptop and moved to her grandmother's small home office, where the Wi-Fi connection was strongest. Ashley guided her to a private video chat where Marcus and several other faces appeared on screen. Students Maya recognized but had never spoken with directly. "Maya, meet the real resistance," Ashley said. "After your suspension, students started coming forward. A lot of students. One by one, they began sharing their stories. Carmen Rodriguez, whose science fair project had been sabotaged with contaminated chemicals. David Kim, whose debate team research had been stolen and submitted by another student. Jennifer Washington, whose poetry had been plagiarized and published under a white student's name in the school literary magazine. All scholarship students," Marcus noted grimly. "All within the past 2 years. All cases that were quietly resolved with the victims leaving Riverside." Maya felt her heart racing as she realized the true scope of what they were facing. "How many total?" 15 confirmed cases, Ashley replied. "And that's just what we found so far." "Maya, your live stream didn't just expose one conspiracy, it opened the floodgates." Carmen leaned closer to her camera. "The thing is, most of us didn't realize it was connected until we saw what happened to you. We thought we were just unlucky, or that we had made enemies." but the patterns are identical. There's more, David added. Some of us started comparing notes about our recruitment process. We all had interviews with the same admissions officer, Dr. Pemberton. He specifically sought out high-achieving minority students from working-class families. Maya's mind raced as she processed this information. He was selecting targets from the beginning, building a database of students who would be vulnerable to this kind of attack. Ashley nodded. It gets worse. Jennifer found communications between Riverside and several other elite schools. They've been sharing information about problem scholarship students, essentially blacklisting kids who speak up about discrimination. Maya felt sick. The conspiracy wasn't just about maintaining Riverside's demographics. It was about controlling the entire pipeline of elite education for students like her. What about Isaiah? Maya asked, suddenly remembering their planned protection of the music student. Marcus smiled grimly. That's actually our first piece of good news. We managed to warn him in time, and he moved his instruments to a secure location off campus. But Maya. Thursday night revealed something huge. Ashley took over the explanation. We set up surveillance of our own around the music building. Dr. Pemberton showed up exactly when we predicted, but he wasn't alone. She shared her screen, showing grainy footage from a concealed camera. Maya watched as Dr. Pemberton approached the music building, followed by two other figures. As they moved under a security light, Maya could clearly identify Brittany Westbrook and her father, Harold Westbrook. They spent 40 minutes searching for Isaiah's violin, Ashley continued. When they couldn't find it, Harold Westbrook made several phone calls. We managed to get audio of one of them. The sound quality was poor, but Harold Westbrook's voice was unmistakable. The operation is compromised. These scholarship kids are organizing faster than anticipated. We need to accelerate the timeline for Phase 2. Maya felt a chill. Phase 2? Jennifer Washington, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. I think I know what that means. My father works in the state education department. There's been talk about legislation that would limit need-based aid to private schools, requiring them to prioritize merit-based scholarships instead. Which sounds good in theory, David added, but merit would be defined by standardized test scores that correlate heavily with socioeconomic status. It would effectively end meaningful financial aid for working-class students. Maya stared at her screen, understanding dawning. They're not just targeting individual students. They're working to change the entire system. Harold Westbrook has been lobbying state legislators for months, Ashley confirmed. And several Riverside Academy board members have connections to the committee reviewing the legislation. Maya stood up and began pacing her grandmother's small office. Everything was connected. The individual sabotage, the institutional cover-ups, and the legislative efforts. It was a coordinated campaign to eliminate economic diversity from elite education. We need irrefutable evidence, Maya said. Something that can't be dismissed or twisted. Marcus leaned forward. That's why we called you. Ashley has an idea, but it's risky. Ashley's expression was serious. There's a major donor gala this Saturday at Riverside. All the board members will be there, along with state legislators and potential donors. Harold Westbrook is giving the keynote address about maintaining excellence in education. The conversations that happen at these events are where the real decisions get made, Jennifer added. If we could document those private discussions. Maya understood immediately. You want to record the gala, not just record, Ashley said. I want to stream it live, the same way we did with your board meeting. Make it impossible for them to deny or cover up what they're planning. Maya felt her pulse quickening. It was audacious and dangerous, but it might be their only chance to expose the full scope of the conspiracy. How would we get access? Maya asked. Ashley smiled. My father is a major donor. I've been invited to attend as his representative, and I'm allowed to bring guests. The security will be intense, Marcus warned. These people are paranoid about media exposure, which is why we need someone they wouldn't suspect, Ashley replied, looking directly at Maya through the screen. Someone they think they've already defeated. Maya realized what Ashley was proposing. You want me to come back to Riverside? Not officially, Ashley clarified. As my guest at a private event. Technically, your suspension only applies to academic activities. Maya's grandmother appeared in the doorway, having caught enough of the conversation to understand what was being discussed. She and Maya exchanged a long look, communicating in the way that only family can. "It's dangerous," her grandmother said quietly in Mandarin. "Staying silent is more dangerous," Maya replied in the same language. Her grandmother nodded slowly. "Then you need to be smarter than all of them." Maya turned back to her laptop. "What's the plan?" Ashley pulled up architectural diagrams of the event space. The gala is being held in Riverside's main auditorium, but the real conversations happen in the VIP reception area beforehand. That's where Harold Westbrook will be meeting with legislators and board members. "I can provide technical support," David offered. "My family's electronics business has access to professional-grade recording equipment that would be nearly impossible to detect," Carmen added. "And I can help with logistics. My mother works catering for these kinds of events. I know the building layout and security protocols." Maya felt the familiar sensation of pieces falling into place, but this time the stakes were exponentially higher. They weren't just trying to clear her name anymore. They were attempting to expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of state government. "If we do this," Maya said carefully, "there's no going back. They'll know exactly who was responsible." "They already know," Marcus replied. "The question is whether we're going to let them win by intimidation." Maya looked around at the faces on her screen, students who had risked their own academic futures to support her fight for justice. She thought about her destroyed art installation, the weeks of systematic harassment, and her grandmother's faith in her ability to overcome any challenge. "All right," Maya said finally, "let's burn it all down." The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of preparation. David acquired high-definition recording equipment, disguised as jewelry and accessories. Carmen provided detailed intelligence about security procedures and event logistics. Ashley used her social connections to confirm the attendance of key targets and their planned discussion topics. Maya spent the time studying everyone who would be at the gala, memorizing faces, researching backgrounds, and preparing for the performance of her life. She would need to be invisible among people who considered her an existential threat to their way of life. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of persistent drizzle that made everything look stark and unforgiving. Maya stood in front of her grandmother's mirror, adjusting the simple black dress Ashley had provided. Hidden in her jewelry were 3 separate recording devices, nearly undetectable but capable of capturing high-quality audio and video. Her grandmother appeared behind her in the reflection. "You look like your mother when she was fighting the school board about bilingual education," she said softly. Maya turned to face her grandmother directly. "Were you scared for her?" "Terrified," her grandmother admitted, "but proud. Sometimes the most important battles are the ones that scare us most." Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. "Car is outside. Ready to make history?" Maya took one last look at her reflection, seeing not the defeated scholarship student who had been expelled 3 days ago, but something harder and more determined. She was walking back into enemy territory, but this time she was armed with truth and surrounded by allies. As Maya walked toward the waiting car, she felt the weight of everyone counting on her. Not just the students who had been victimized, but the future students who deserved better than a system designed to exclude them. The war for the soul of elite education was about to reach its climax. The Riverside Academy Founders Gala transformed the campus into something resembling a movie set. Valets in crisp uniforms directed luxury vehicles through the circular drive, while photographers captured arrivals under gleaming spotlights. Maya watched from Ashley's BMW as Georgia's political and educational elite streamed through the main entrance, their formal wear and confident smiles masking the corruption that would soon be exposed. "Remember," Ashley said, adjusting Maya's hidden camera one final time, "act like you belong here. These people respect confidence above everything else." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of the recording devices concealed in her jewelry. Her earpiece crackled softly as David's voice came through. "Audio check, Maya. Tap your bracelet twice if you can hear me clearly." Maya complied, and David's voice became stronger. "Perfect. Carmen, are you in position?" Carmen's voice joined the channel. "Kitchen access confirmed. I have a visual on the VIP reception area and can monitor security movements." As they approached the entrance, Maya spotted familiar faces from the disastrous board meeting. Mrs. Whitfield stood near the main doors, greeting arrivals with practiced charm. Robert Sterling held court near a champagne fountain, his laughter carrying across the marble foyer. But it was Harold Westbrook who commanded the most attention, surrounded by men in expensive suits who hung on his every word. "Target acquired," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible as they passed security. The main reception area buzzed with carefully orchestrated networking. Maya moved through the crowd like a ghost, her presence noted but not questioned. Ashley's social standing provided perfect cover, another wealthy donor's daughter bringing a friend to observe the machinery of privilege. Maya positioned herself near a marble column that offered clear sightlines to Harold Westbrook's gathering while remaining partially concealed. Through her earpiece, she could hear Marcus coordinating with other team members positioned around the venue. "Maya, you need to get closer," Ashley's voice whispered. "Harold's about to move to the private meeting room." Maya watched as Harold Westbrook began steering his group toward a corridor marked "Board Members Only." This was the moment they had planned for, the private discussions where real decisions were made, away from public scrutiny. "I'm moving," Maya said softly, following at a distance. The private meeting room was more intimate than the main reception, furnished with leather chairs and oil paintings of Riverside Academy's founders. Through the partially open door, Maya could see Harold Westbrook settling into what was clearly his element, a room full of powerful men ready to listen to his vision. Maya found a position in an alcove just outside the room, close enough for her hidden devices to capture clear audio but concealed by shadows and decorative plants. She activated the recording equipment with a subtle gesture and settled in to document what might be the most important conversation of the evening. "Gentlemen," Harold Westbrook began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command, "thank you for making time for this crucial discussion. The future of educational excellence in Georgia depends on the decisions we make tonight." State Senator Richard Hayes, whom Maya recognized from news coverage, leaned forward. "Harold, I appreciate your passion for education, but some of my colleagues are concerned about the optics of reducing need-based aid. It looks like we're targeting disadvantaged students." Harold's laugh was cold. "Dick, we're not targeting anyone. We're simply ensuring that merit, not social engineering, determines academic opportunity. These scholarship programs have created an entitlement mentality that undermines genuine achievement." Dr. Pemberton, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "The scholarship students we've observed consistently demonstrate poor judgment and questionable integrity. The recent incident with Miss Chen perfectly illustrates the character issues we're dealing with." Maya felt her jaw clench, but she forced herself to remain motionless and silent. Board member Thomas Crawford nodded in agreement. The Chen situation was handled properly, but it revealed how these students can manipulate faculty and even legal representation to support false narratives. Senator Hayes still looked uncomfortable. "But Harold, the media coverage of that incident wasn't exactly favorable. That live stream created a public relations nightmare." Harold's expression darkened. "Which is exactly why we need to accelerate our timeline. These students are learning to use social media and public sympathy to undermine institutional authority. We can't allow that precedent to spread." Maya's hidden camera captured every word as Harold pulled out a tablet and began displaying what appeared to be legislative documents. "The Educational Excellence Act is scheduled for committee review next month," Harold continued. "But I propose we push for emergency consideration. Frame it as a response to the recent security breaches and integrity violations at elite institutions." Dr. Pemberton leaned forward eagerly. "We have documented evidence of coordinated student misconduct, including conspiracy to commit burglary and fraud. That should provide sufficient justification for immediate action." Maya realized they were planning to use her own investigation as evidence supporting legislation that would eliminate need-based scholarships statewide. Senator Hayes reviewed the documents Harold had shared. This would effectively end affirmative action in private education. The political fallout could be significant. "The political benefit will be greater," Harold replied smoothly. "Parents are tired of watching their children lose opportunities to less qualified applicants who check demographic boxes. This legislation protects merit-based admissions while removing legal liability for institutions that maintain traditional standards." Board member Sterling raised his glass. "Harold's right. We've allowed political correctness to compromise academic integrity for too long. It's time to restore proper priorities." Maya listened in horrified fascination as they continued planning the systematic exclusion of students like her from elite education. But their conversation was interrupted by a commotion from the main reception area. "Sir, you can't go in there." A security guard's voice echoed from the hallway. Heavy footsteps approached and a new voice joined the conversation, one that made Maya's blood run cold. "Gentlemen, we have a problem." Maya peered around the edge of her hiding spot and saw a man she didn't recognize. Tall, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone accustomed to solving problems through intimidation. Harold looked annoyed. "Frank, I specifically requested no interruptions." Frank Morrison, head of Riverside Academy's private security firm, ignored the reproach. "Harold, we've detected unauthorized surveillance equipment in this building. Professional grade, not student phones." Maya felt her heart stop. They had discovered the operation. Dr. Pemberton stood abruptly. "Are you saying we're being recorded right now?" Frank nodded grimly. "Possibly. We've identified at least 3 active transmission sources, and they're using military-grade encryption. This isn't some amateur student operation." Maya realized she had seconds to act before security pinpointed her location. Through her earpiece, she could hear Ashley's panicked voice. "Maya, get out now." They're surrounding the building. But Maya made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. Instead of fleeing, she stood up and walked directly into the meeting room. The conversation stopped as if someone had pressed a pause button. 7 powerful men stared at the young woman who had just materialized in their private sanctuary. "Hello, Mr. Westbrook," Maya said calmly. "I believe you were just discussing my future." Harold's face cycled through shock, rage, and calculation before settling on cold fury. "Miss Chen, how predictable. You simply can't accept that your time at Riverside Academy is over." "You're right," Maya replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "My time at Riverside is over. But so is yours." She pulled out her phone and held it up, showing the live stream that had been broadcasting their entire conversation to thousands of viewers. Frank Morrison stepped forward, his hand moving toward his jacket. "Sir, I can handle this situation." "I wouldn't do that," Maya said, not taking her eyes off Harold. "Because right now your entire conspiracy is being broadcast live to news outlets, student organizations, and civil rights groups across the country." Dr. Pemberton grabbed Maya's phone, but she stepped back smoothly. "It's too late, Dr. Pemberton. Everything you've said tonight is already archived and distributed. Your plan to eliminate need-based scholarships. Your admission that you've been systematically targeting minority students. Even your involvement in forging my academic records. It's all documented." Senator Hayes had gone pale. "Harold, tell me this isn't what it looks like." Harold's composure finally cracked. "You don't understand what you've done, you little girl. Do you think exposing this conversation will change anything? We have resources you can't imagine. Connections that reach into every level of state government." Maya interrupted. "Yes, I know. That's why I made sure tonight's broadcast went directly to federal authorities." Maya pulled up another screen on her phone, showing a Department of Education investigation notice. "Apparently, systematic exclusion of minority students from federally funded programs is a federal crime. Who knew?" The room erupted in chaos. Senator Hayes began backing toward the exit, clearly trying to distance himself from the situation. Board members started talking over each other, their voices rising in panic and recrimination. Through her earpiece, Maya could hear Ashley. "Maya, federal agents just arrived at the main entrance." "How did you?" Maya smiled for the first time in weeks. "Let's just say my attorney has more connections than we let on." Frank Morrison made one last attempt to grab Maya's phone, but the meeting room door burst open as federal agents in dark suits flooded in. "Nobody moves," the lead agent announced. "This is a federal investigation into civil rights violations and educational fraud." Maya held up her hands but kept her phone visible and recording. "Agent Williams, I believe you'll find everything you need in tonight's broadcast. These gentlemen have been very thorough in documenting their conspiracy." Harold Westbrook's face had turned ashen as he realized the magnitude of his exposure. "This is entrapment." That girl orchestrated this entire situation. Agent Williams looked at Maya with something resembling respect. Miss Chen, I presume? Your attorney contacted us yesterday with some very interesting evidence. Maya nodded. Everything we promised to deliver, plus tonight's confirmation that the conspiracy reached the state government. As federal agents began reading rights and collecting evidence, Maya finally allowed herself to feel the weight of what had just happened. The systematic persecution of scholarship students at Riverside Academy was over. The legislative effort to eliminate need-based aid was dead. And the careers of everyone in that room were about to end in scandal and criminal charges. Dr. Pemberton made one final attempt at defiance as agents escorted him past Maya. You think you've won something? There are dozens of schools like Riverside, hundreds of people like us. You can't stop them all. Maya met his gaze steadily. I don't have to stop them all. I just have to make it clear that students like me won't be silent anymore. As the chaos subsided and the last of the conspirators were led away, Maya found herself alone in the meeting room that had hosted so many decisions designed to exclude people like her. She looked around at the oil paintings of distinguished alumni and founder portraits, understanding that this room would never again be a place where discrimination was planned in whispered confidence. Her phone buzzed with a text from her grandmother. Watching the news, very proud. Come home when you're ready. Maya smiled and headed toward the exit, knowing that while this battle was won, the war for educational equality would continue. But now, at least, she had proven that truth, strategy, and courage could defeat even the most entrenched systems of privilege and corruption. 6 months later, Maya stood in the main gallery of the Atlanta Museum of Contemporary Art, surrounded by her reconstructed installation, Invisible Voices. The piece had evolved since its destruction at Riverside Academy, incorporating elements that told the story of her struggle and victory. New layers included documentary footage from the federal investigation, audio recordings of the conspiracy meetings, and portraits of the 15 scholarship students whose stories had been silenced. The gallery was packed for the opening reception of Truth and Power, Student Voices in Elite Education, an exhibition Maya had curated featuring work by young artists who had faced institutional discrimination. Representatives from major news outlets, civil rights organizations, and educational institutions had come to witness what many were calling a watershed moment in the fight for educational equity. Maya's grandmother stood beside the central installation, wearing her best dress and the jade pendant that had become her signature accessory during the media coverage of Maya's story. She smiled as reporters approached, her English now confident after months of interviews about her granddaughter's courage. Maya always understood that art is not decoration, she told a journalist from the Washington Post. Art is truth made visible. That is why they tried to destroy it. Across the room, Maya watched Ashley Wong speaking with a group of high school students who had traveled from across the Southeast to attend the exhibition. Ashley had transferred to a progressive arts school in California after Riverside Academy's reputation imploded, but she had become one of Maya's closest collaborators in documenting educational discrimination nationwide. The most important thing we learned, Ashley was explaining to the students, is that individual courage becomes collective power when people start connecting their stories. Maya's installation wasn't just about her experience. It became a catalyst for everyone who had been silenced to speak up. Marcus Thompson approached Maya, carrying a tablet displaying the latest news coverage. You need to see this, he said with a grin. The headline read, Riverside Academy settles federal civil rights lawsuit for $15 million. The article detailed how the Department of Education had found systematic violations of federal anti-discrimination laws dating back over a decade. The settlement would fund scholarships for students from underrepresented backgrounds and establish oversight programs at private schools across Georgia. $15 million, Maya said, shaking her head in amazement. That's enough to fund full scholarships for 300 students. Marcus nodded. And that's just the beginning. 7 other elite schools have already implemented new policies to prevent the kind of discrimination we exposed. The ripple effects are spreading faster than anyone expected. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from David Kim, who was now studying computer science at MIT on a full scholarship. He had developed an app called Academic Integrity Monitor that allowed students to anonymously report discrimination and track patterns across institutions. The app had been downloaded over 100,000 times, and had already helped expose corruption at schools in 12 states. David says the app just identified a potential Riverside-style conspiracy at a prep school in Connecticut, Maya told Marcus. 3 scholarship students reporting identical sabotage patterns. The success of their movement had attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Maya had received personal letters from federal judges, Fortune 500 CEOs, and even former presidents, all praising her courage and strategic thinking. But the message that meant the most had come from Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation, a neurosurgeon who had faced similar discrimination at medical school 30 years earlier. "Your generation succeeded where mine failed," Dr. Chen had written. "You understood that documentation and strategy matter more than anger and accusations. You turned their own systems against them." Maya moved through the gallery, observing how visitors interacted with the various installations. Carmen Rodriguez had contributed a powerful piece about the hidden costs of educational trauma, incorporating medical imagery and personal testimony from students who had suffered anxiety and depression due to systematic harassment. Jennifer Washington's poetry installation used voice recognition technology to play different verses based on the listener's demographic data, illustrating how the same words could carry vastly different meanings for different audiences. But it was the collaborative wall that drew the most attention. Over 200 students from across the country had submitted stories, artwork, and evidence of discrimination they had faced. The wall evolved daily as new contributions arrived, creating a living document of institutional bias in American education. Mrs. Holloway, who had become a whistleblower advocate after leaving Riverside Academy, approached Maya with a familiar expression of pride mixed with concern. "I've been contacted by schools in 23 states requesting diversity and inclusion training," she reported. "They're scared, Maya. Your success has made discrimination too risky for institutions to ignore." Maya smiled at her former teacher. "Good. Fear of consequences is what changes behavior when moral arguments fail." Mrs. Holloway pulled out a letter bearing the seal of the National Education Association. "They want to offer you a full scholarship to any graduate program in the country, plus funding for a documentary about your experience." Maya had received dozens of similar offers since the Riverside Academy scandal broke. Full scholarships to Ivy League schools, book deals worth millions, speaking engagements that could fund her grandmother's retirement. But each opportunity came with expectations about how she should present her story, what message she should deliver, and how grateful she should appear. "I'm not interested in being the poster child for overcoming adversity," Maya replied. "I want to prevent other students from facing the same obstacles I did." Instead of accepting individual rewards, Maya had established the Invisible Voices Foundation, a nonprofit organization that provided legal support, technical resources, and strategic guidance to students facing institutional discrimination. The Foundation's first major initiative was developing a network of student investigators trained in Maya's documentation and exposure techniques. Tyler Brooks, the politician's son who had provided crucial intelligence during their investigation, had become an unlikely ally in this effort. His father's corruption charges had led to his resignation from the state legislature, but Tyler had used his insider knowledge of political networks to help the Foundation identify schools where discrimination was most likely occurring. "Maya," Tyler called out from across the gallery, approaching a woman Maya didn't recognize. "I'd like you to meet Dr. Angela Martinez. She's the new Secretary of Education for Georgia." Dr. Martinez was younger than Maya had expected, probably in her early 40s, with the confident bearing of someone who had fought her own battles against institutional barriers. Her handshake was firm, her gaze direct and assessing. "Ms. Chen, your work has already influenced policy discussions at the federal level," Dr. Martinez said without preamble. "The Department of Education is developing new guidelines for investigating discrimination complaints, based largely on the documentation methods you pioneered." Maya felt a surge of satisfaction. Systematic change was more important than individual vindication, and policy changes would protect students who didn't have the advantages of strategic thinking and media attention. "What kind of guidelines?" Maya asked. "Required digital forensics for all discrimination investigations, mandatory reporting of patterns across student populations, and most importantly, protection for student whistleblowers who expose institutional corruption," Dr. Martinez explained. "We're calling it the Chen Protocol." Maya felt her grandmother's hand squeeze her shoulder with pride and emotion. Having federal policy named after her granddaughter was beyond anything the elderly woman could have imagined when Maya first arrived at her house, traumatized and defeated. As the evening progressed, Maya found herself gravitating toward the newest addition to her installation, a section dedicated to future voices. This area featured artwork by elementary and middle school students who had learned about Maya's story and wanted to contribute their own perspectives on fairness, justice, and speaking truth to power. One piece particularly caught her attention: a simple watercolor painting by an 8-year-old girl from rural Mississippi. The painting showed two schools side by side, one with bright colors and modern equipment, the other faded and broken. At the bottom, in careful child handwriting, were the words, "When I grow up, I want to make schools fair like Maya did." Maya stared at the painting for a long time, feeling the weight of responsibility that came with her unwanted fame. Children across the country now knew her story, and many saw her as proof that the system could be changed by individual courage and strategic action. "Heavy thoughts?" came a familiar voice behind her. Maya turned to see Kevin Martinez, the IT student whose sister had first approached her with information about the security footage. Kevin had graduated from Riverside Academy just before the scandal broke, but he had testified as a federal witness about Dr. Pemberton's manipulation of computer systems. "Just thinking about what comes next," Maya replied. "Individual victories are important, but they don't change the underlying power structures that created these problems in the first place." Kevin nodded thoughtfully. "That's why I've been working on something bigger." He pulled out his phone and showed Maya an app interface she didn't recognize. "It's called Equity Tracker. It uses artificial intelligence to analyze admission patterns, disciplinary data, and academic outcomes across all schools receiving federal funding. The system can identify discrimination before it becomes systematic harassment." Maya studied the interface, impressed by its sophistication. "How does it work?" "Schools are required to report demographic data anyway," Kevin explained. "My system cross-references that data with academic outcomes, disciplinary actions, and scholarship distributions. When the AI detects patterns that suggest bias, it triggers automatic investigations." Maya felt excitement building as she realized the implications. "You're talking about preventing discrimination instead of just responding to it after students have already been harmed." "Exactly. And because it's automated, individual prejudices can't influence the investigation process. The data speaks for itself." Kevin's innovation represented the kind of systematic solution Maya had been hoping to see emerge from her fight against Riverside Academy. Instead of relying on individual students to risk their academic futures exposing corruption, technology could provide early warning systems that protected vulnerable populations. As the reception wound down and guests began departing, Maya found herself alone with her installation once again. The gallery lights had been dimmed, but her LED programming still pulsed gently, making the portraits of forgotten heroes appear and disappear in endless cycles. Her phone displayed dozens of messages from supporters, reporters, and students seeking advice. But one message stood out from the others. It came from Dr. Pemberton, writing from federal prison, where he was serving a 2-year sentence for civil rights violations. "Miss Chen," the message read, "I want you to know that I respect what you accomplished, even though I disagree with your methods. You demonstrated strategic thinking that would have impressed my former colleagues in corporate security. I hope you use your talents to build rather than destroy." Maya stared at the message for several minutes, processing the strange mixture of admission and deflection it contained. Even from prison, Dr. Pemberton couldn't fully acknowledge the harm he had caused, but he recognized her capabilities as an opponent. She deleted the message without responding. Dr. Pemberton belonged to her past, and Maya was focused entirely on the future she was helping to create. Her grandmother appeared beside her, moving quietly through the gallery with the grace of someone who had learned to navigate spaces that weren't designed for people like her. "Ready to go home?" she asked in Mandarin. Maya looked around the gallery one more time, taking in the evidence of how far she had traveled from that first morning at Riverside Academy, when her name had been deliberately mispronounced. The girl who had stood silently while her identity was erased had become a voice that could not be ignored. "Actually, Nai," Maya replied. "I think I'm already home." As they walked toward the exit, Maya's phone buzzed with a final message of the evening. It came from Isaiah Washington, the music student they had protected from sabotage. He was now studying at Juilliard, on a full scholarship, but more importantly, He had formed a coalition of performing arts students dedicated to exposing discrimination in conservatory admissions. Maya, his message read, wanted you to know that the Juilliard investigation you inspired just led to policy changes at every major music school in the country. Your courage created permission for all of us to speak up. Thank you for showing us that silence isn't survival, it's surrender. Maya smiled as she and her grandmother stepped into the cool Atlanta evening. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students facing discrimination, new systems that needed to be exposed and reformed. But tonight, she allowed herself to feel the satisfaction of work well done and justice finally served. The girl who had been targeted for destruction had instead become the architect of transformation. And her voice, once invisible, now echoed in galleries and classrooms and legislative chambers across the country, ensuring that future students would never have to fight these battles alone. The art installation behind them continued its gentle pulse of light, making heroes visible in the darkness, just as Maya had made justice visible in a system designed to hide its flaws. The work would continue, but the foundation had been built and it was unshakable. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.